Hey, everybody. This is Callie D with a Smitten Kitten right here on Deep Ellum Radio, where every Thursday from 9 to 11, we discuss sex, love, dating, and relationships. Today we have Drasmatic. Did I say that correctly?
Correct, correct.
Awesome. Today we have Drasmatic, who actually is from Texas, but is now living in San Francisco. Is that correct?
Hayward slash Oakland.
Okay, so the Bay Area.
Yes.
Yeah, we have him on today. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Callie D. What's up? My name's Drasmatic. I'm from the state of Texas, as she said. I lived in Katy. I was born in San Antonio and graduated high school in McKinney outside of Dallas. And I currently reside in the Bay Area, California, Hayward, Oakland, all over the Bay Area I've lived, Vallejo. So I'm a hip-hop producer and part of beat culture for organizations in the Bay Area like Today's Future Sound, Bay Beat Summit, Hayward the Stacks Record Shop, Flip a Beat Club. I'm a overall sample-based hip-hop producer, and I'm here with Callie D to have this little interview today talking about mental illness, which I would like to consider myself a quote-unquote voice here, but I suffer from schizophrenia. So this is an interview just based upon not only music and mental illness, but also her main topic in relationships and living with having mental illness and living with somebody who understands your illness and how that works.
That's awesome. And I mean, if we're being honest here, I think a lot of people struggle with mental health in one way or another, especially the way that America is set up and in our history, just as humans. So you're definitely not alone when it comes to mental health. Now, give me an overview of how you grew up. Like, how did your childhood experiences shape the person that you became, like, and especially when it comes to relationships?
Well, as a kid, like growing up in the 90s, I was kind of like the introvert. I was always kind of quiet and to myself. I never really this is my creative difference. I never really hung out with a bunch of the neighborhood kids. I did on occasions, but not all the time. Where I hang out with a bunch of neighborhood kids and go out and go throw rocks at cars or whatever. I was usually the one inside playing video games and watching television, and I always wanted to fit in with the rest of the kids, but I couldn't because one, my family was kind of strict. They were like, I think it's best if you stay inside. Don't hang out before 9 o'clock. And that adapted me wanting to keep to myself. I adapted that behavior of wanting to keep alone. And naturally, in my relationship, and especially in my youth, I found somebody who kept to themselves. It was almost like we were peas in a pod because we had a similar instance of childhood where we were introverted and we kind of like peace. We like quiet. In past relationships, I always had a quarrel with women wanting to go out and go party and go drink, or I have no problem with it. I like doing it too once in a while, but in the past, it was basically about, let's go out with my friends, let's go out and go out with my male friends, let's go do this, let's go do that. And I never really could quote unquote, keep up with them. So when it came down to my childhood experience, it was more so about who I was a woman that I was naturally attracted to was always peaceful, always quiet, always to themselves, intelligent, smart. So that really carried over to me, and as far as my childhood goes. When it came to relationships as well, I had to figure out how to be around somebody who was quiet. So naturally, I had to stay quiet. So the relationship that I'm currently in, she's quiet into herself. She's very into reading her articles online, doing things like that. So I adapted that behavior, knowing self and knowing how to tune out and always stay peaceful and quiet. So that's just the way that I carried over in from my childhood to the relationship that I'm in now.
Yeah, and like you said, having somebody that's an extrovert when you're an introvert, like sometimes it kind of works because opposites do attract. But there definitely becomes a time where it's like you don't want to go out and do anything. You know, I think maybe when we're a little bit older, you know, we're able to like move without being so codependent. You know what I mean? But definitely in like your younger years, I feel like you need somebody that's kind of on the same level as far as that's concerned. So
And plus, having an extrovert with the introvert is like, da 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 da. She's talking your head off. She's talking your head off. No offense, no offense, but I'm just saying, whenever it comes down to like having somebody who talks a lot and you're trying to be quiet, it's like, oh my God, it gives you a headache. But having somebody who's like by your side and always smiling at you, always asking if you're okay, always checking on you, playing with you, understanding you, it really helps out. It really solidifies that type of love and that type of interest. That's the way I see it.
yeah, and I think whenever I was younger, I was definitely more extroverted, but I find myself being more of an introvert now. But I kind of like switched between the two, especially when it comes to talking. Sometimes I'm like, have all the things to say and really excited, but
Right.
other times I'm kind of quiet. So I used to identify as ambivert, but
Yep.
I'm not even really sure if that's like a real thing or not. But
Never.
uh, it's definitely been something that as I get older, I realize, you know, used to, because extroverts, they get energy from other people and being out and doing stuff.
Mhm.
And I can see at one point, perhaps that was how I was, but I don't know, man. Getting closer to 40, it's like I have I have got to like recharge, like away from people, like go away and be alone and, you know, all that kind of good stuff. So anyway, now you mentioned you were diagnosed with schizophrenia. At what age were you diagnosed and did you see, were there signs like beforehand? Because I know sometimes mental illness can display itself differently in kids where, you know, maybe they think it's ADD or something like that. And then things like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder and borderline personality disorder, they tend to get diagnosed a little bit later in life, in your 20s and your 30s. So after, like, what age were you diagnosed and what kind of led up to you figuring out that that was a thing?
I was first diagnosed at 20. And before that, you're right. The doctors did think I have ADHD. So I was prescribed Adderall at 19. I took the Adderall medication for about a year. And eventually I noticed signs of me hearing things and seeing things that weren't there. At first I thought, I had dropped out of college and I was like, maybe I'm not smart enough, maybe I'm not good enough. And it was the polar opposite. It was like I was too smart. It was like, at first it's thought, I need to get on an ADHD medication that way I can focus. But instead, I had too much going on my upper story. And it was too much of a focus. It was like I was seeing reality differently than what was really perceived.
Right.
So I ended up having to get off the ADHD medication. I met with my doctor again, and I was like a space alien in the head. I was like, Doc, I'm not feeling well. This is not working for me. Whatever is going on is not working. And they have put me on a 5150. Another thing that led up to it was, uh, you know,
And for those that don't know, 5150 is a mental health warrant.
yes, yes. And they put you in a psych hospital and you have to stay there for a week and they put you on a medication.
Right.
And also, it just seemed like whenever I was being hospitalized, I was also doing drugs. I was also doing different types of drugs, and it led to me not feeling normal. It led to me doing psychotic things that most normal people wouldn't do.
Right.
And after I got put on 5150, they took me out the psych hospital. And weeks later, I still kept trying to do drugs, and I landed back in the psych hospital. Then a few years later, I've been hospitalized 4 times. So it was like every instance, every hospitalization, I learned something that was peculiar about myself. And it wasn't a pleasant experience. It was more so a learning curve. And I had to learn. I'll get into this later, but I had to learn how to stay away from certain drugs, how to stay away from certain types of liquor, beer. I had to stay away from it. I learned my lesson how to deal with it. Because in my 20s, I drank throughout my 20s, but at that time I was learning myself. It was a learning curve, learning what you can and what you can't do, like knowledge yourself. So
Right.
yeah.
And now I don't know if usually when people are, or what I've seen when people are diagnosed with schizophrenia, they also have like bipolar disorder. Bipolar disorder. I don't know why I messed that word up. Or manic depression. Was that part of your diagnosis, or was it just schizophrenia?
At first it was depression, anxiety, and schizophrenia. I don't suffer from bipolar disorder. I think a doctor mentioned schizoaffective, which is a mixture of schizophrenia and bipolar disorder.
Gotcha.
But mainly it's just hearing voices and seeing paranoid delusions. Mainly that's the main thing.
Yeah, and the only reason I bring that up is because one of the things with bipolar disorder is people who suffer from it usually self-medicate either, with different types of drugs. So, when they're feeling depressed and sleeping all the time, maybe they'll take amphetamines or, cocaine or something that like, lifts them up. And then, when they're in their manic episodes, then, they want to kind of calm down. So they'll smoke pot or drink or, and it also can cause those swings to happen. And I know a lot about it because my mother has it, and I knew she had it for a long time. She just recently got diagnosed so she could get a government check, basically. And then I did like a huge research paper in college on it. So anyway, I've kind of studied bipolar disorder. Also, just to make sure that I would know the signs if I had it, because at one point I actually went to the doctor, suffered from postpartum depression really bad, and I attempted suicide. So, they gave me the mental health warrant. And at that point, I was like, all right, I was in my late 20s. I was 27, I think. Anyway, I was like fully ready to be diagnosed, because obviously it runs in my family. I have an aunt that also has it. My mother has it. And so I was thinking, especially suffering from the postpartum depression, that perhaps I had it too. Turns out I did not. I just had a lot of childhood trauma that I needed to deal with. But anyway.
Yeah, I've noticed a pattern in people that have a mental problem is one of their family members also has a mental problem,
Right.
and that ties into their symptoms and what they go through. And for me personally, I didn't know anybody in my family that suffered from mental illness besides my aunt. So, and I've never spoke to her, but I think she suffers from bipolar disorder.
Yeah. And
So
and it's also something that, even when my mother was growing up, they didn't know how to control her. They didn't know what was wrong with her. She was just a difficult child. It's only been really and I don't know how old you are. I'm an 80s baby. But it's only really been like my generation and maybe like maybe the generation before that have gone to, seek mental health and from a professional. There was always like some kind of shame in the past with not being, quote unquote normal, and then here we are in 2022 and nobody's normal. You know what I mean? We all need therapy. We all need to go see a professional. I think we'd be a whole lot better as a society. So,
especially with COVID going on, it seems like a lot of people have lost their minds.
oh, for sure. Yeah. Everybody around us has lost their minds. So how did your mental health affect your relationships?
Well, that question kind of ties back into keeping to yourself. Because naturally, people with mental illness tend to isolate themselves. They tend to keep alone. They don't really socialize that much. You don't see a person. You can see an extroverted schizophrenia or person with bipolar or mental or depression. But when they talk, it's like, okay, I notice he has something different or weird about themselves. And then they tend to judge that person. So I think the best option for me was there's nights where I go out and I start talking, but the best option was to keep to myself and kind of just do my own thing without having a bunch of quarreling or a bunch of talk. So my girlfriend, I won't mention her name, but she's the type to keep to herself, and she has a master's in therapy. So she
Nice.
understands my illness,
Right.
and she's able to cope with me. And if there's any, if I start having an episode or I start acting psychotic, I can go to her and she can calm me down. So we connect on that level, and she's understanding of her. I'm understanding whenever she don't want to be bothered. She'll tell me, not right now. I'd be like, okay, but we connect on that level, and we connect on that level of understanding each other, and and what's important to us. That way, whenever we have a conversation about something, we tend to ask each other questions and tend to try to figure out, okay, how to reason, how to assess a problem and solve it. So, another thing that I learned about myself was I had to go sober. I went sober drinking since COVID, so it's been about 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went sober, my clarity came back. I was like, whoa, what? My clarity came back, and it helped me. It helped me understand myself. It helped me be able to think a little bit sharper. She was the type of person to say, okay, she's not going to limit me. She's not going to tell me what to do, but she'll be like, I don't think that's a good idea,
Right.
and I'll listen.
As any good partner should.
Yeah. So whenever she says, oh, Richard, I don't think you should drink 13 beers and lay on the floor, I'm like, okay, well, I won't. And she says, put the alcohol down. I'd be like, yeah, I'll drink 1 to 2 or whatever. That was in my 20s. I'm in my 30s now. I'm 33, so I'm an 80s baby too.
Okay. Nice.
So whenever now, it's just like after I turned 30, I was like, okay, maybe this ain't a good idea, especially during COVID. You're in the house all day. You can't go out. So it's like, you know, I I didn't think drinking by myself or drinking with her one on one was a good idea if I couldn't socialize. So I was like, okay, maybe I shouldn't do that. But
Yeah.
she understood, you know, what things I was going through, was able to help me out. That put me back going to college. That put me back going to make music. That put me back with my family. She really assisted me and helped me out. So that was a blessing. Another thing that she has the knowledge of, which I had to study upon, was knowledge of meditation. That's another thing that kind of helped me be an advocate for myself. And meditating helped. She understood some things about meditation, going getting her master's in therapy, so she recommended it for me. I picked up about 80 books on consciousness, metaphysics, and meditation, and I read all of them. I was like, you know what? If I can't, if I can't figure out how to cope with my problem by talking about it, let me try to solve it myself. And that's what really helped me out. It gave me another moment of clarity. Going to church gave me another moment of clarity. Understanding chakra systems, knowledge itself, my inner eye, praying. That's what really assisted me.
That sounds like a lot of really good stuff right there. And shout out to your girlfriend because she definitely encouraged you in some very good ways.
Yeah.
I think, sometimes we could be enablers to each other, and that never turns out good. So when you can find somebody who pushes you in the right way to be a better person, you should definitely hold on to that person for sure.
And just come to mention of that, toxic relationships saying, okay, I want you to drink this, I want you to snort this, I want you to inhale, or put this needle up your vein, and if you don't do it, I'm not going to date you. There's relationships like that where they, if you can't do drugs, or you can't really party with them, or you can't hang out with them, or they want you to do something that you normally wouldn't do, that doesn't match what you normally do, they tend to judge you and lie to you. I've even had the police called on me in a relationship for not doing drugs, which made no sense. It made no fucking sense. But
right,
there's people out there like that, and I've been through that. That's one thing I learned at a young age, where you're in a relationship with somebody and they don't really understand you. They can't comprehend what you're going through. So that was a learning curve for me. Was, if I'm in a relationship where somebody says, why don't you smoke weed, or why don't you? I do, but why don't you drink? Why don't you smoke weed? Why don't you go out and go party and go? Let's go to South Lake Tahoe, or and go drink. As far as that goes, I guess that's my creative difference. But I would do it, but I would end up in a worse spot, and people didn't understand what I was going through because my mind doesn't work that way. And as soon as they discover that, they start isolating themselves or saying, I don't really want to be around you because you're no fun.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's like,
I've definitely, and I didn't really have it that blatantly. I gave up drinking in September of last year, and I was never like a person to drink by themselves. I definitely did social drink, but I'm what they call a binge drinker. So whenever I would start, like I just, I had no limits. I could drink a lot. Like I had a high tolerance because I've been doing it since I was 16. But just being able to have friends that maybe they're not sober but they still want to hang out with you is pretty difficult, because like especially when you've built your life kind of around those social circumstances, trying to figure out ways to still be social without being at a bar, or having alcohol involved has been kind of a pickle in and of itself. And definitely I've noticed some people that just don't call me to hang out or invite me to do things anymore because I don't drink. And
all about the alcohol and the drugs. It's never about the person. It's always about the substance.
yeah, and I get it to an extent, but like I can still be around people drinking and not want to drink. Like some people are a little bit worse off on that end. Where like they can't be around it or they'll be tempted. Like I'm just not, I'm not built that way. So, I would still do things like drag brunch or, go to a music venue and people are like, is that hard for you? It's like, no, it's just,
Right.
I'm just going to leave before you do,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely, having sober people around you while you're sober is a good thing. And sometimes it's kind of, it does disrupt your friendship circles and you do see, how good of friends you really were to some people.
And another thing is when I go out to music venues or I'm doing a live show or I can go see Dig Up a Planet's Farside, Black Alicious, or some underground hip hop act. And I look around the crowd or I talk to somebody, and usually, once the alcohol's running through their veins, they start opening up, they start talking, and I feel good not having to sit there and drink with them. And I'm able to talk to them too.
Right.
And it's like once they open up to me, I can answer the question the right way. When I get the alcohol going through my veins, this is just me. But when I get the alcohol going through my veins, I might slip up and say something dumb, and they might get upset. So that kind of helps out with that. But
For sure. I feel that.
yeah, and another thing is whenever I go out to venues and I'm doing a live show, they tend to tempt me into, you want to smoke this, you want to drink that. I'm like, nah, I'm good. I play it cool. And that tends to help out with the way that I socialize, the way that I analyze things. It helps me with my way of thinking.
Yeah. I was really lucky when I decided to quit drinking. I had people around me that didn't even tempt me. And after I had gone like 110 days, it was like New Year's Eve, and I wanted to have a couple of drinks with my friends. It was, later on in the night. I'd already been out for a while not drinking, and I just wanted to have a couple of drinks. And I had one friend that like almost just slapped the drink out of my hand, because that's how much he wanted to support me and not drinking. I ended up having just one drink, but it's good to have people that have your back like that don't tempt you, or know that you're trying to be sober, or and that's what's best for you. See the difference in how it makes you. That was another thing. They're like, we see your growth. Like, we don't want you to like go backwards. So I had to like let them know that, hey, if I'm having a drink, it's just one drink. I'm not going to go back to drunk Callie, but finding that support system is also really important. So as far as the schizophrenia and the mental illness, how do you feel? Has that hindered your creativity, or has it helped you?
I think that's interesting question because it can go both ways. I think one thing is I hate taking medication. I never been a fan of taking medication. I've always hated it. But a lot of people with mental illness, they're very creative people. I can't name one person that's not creative that doesn't have mental. How do I word that? One person that's creative that doesn't have mental illness because art and mental illness go hand in hand.
Oh, for sure. Or at least some kind of eccentricity,
Oh, yeah.
like geniuses, billionaires, some of the smartest men that made some of the best things, and women, were very eccentric. Look at Howard Hughes, he
Uh,
definitely suffered from mental
Albert
illness.
Einstein, he was bipolar.
Right.
I know you knew that. And Mark Zuckerberg suffers from mental illness. The best thinkers in the world, they all suffer from mental illness.
Right.
The most creative people, like Bjork, John Lennon, like any top artist or any top billionaire, as Callie had mentioned, they all suffer from some type of problem with dealing with thinking. They're brilliant. So, and I've read about this. I've read about some of this stuff. I've seen some of this stuff. So it's very interesting. And Callie did not lie. There's a lot of brilliant people you think are super smart that have some type of mental problem or some type of form of depression or anxiety.
Right. Or some kind of quirk to them.
Yeah.
Eccentric. Whether that displays itself in like a mental illness type of way, I feel like it all kind of runs together. So you mentioned that you don't like to take medication. Do you feel like that hinders your creative process? Because I've definitely heard that from people who are creative, but also have something that, it suggested that they take medication for.
The medication kind of makes you feel dull. It kind of brings you down. So it hinders my ability to think in certain creative ways. But if I don't have the medication, then I'm running around acting crazy. So I need the medication.
Right. It's like the lesser of the two evils, if you will.
Yeah. But a lot of people with mental illness are super creative. And when I went through IOP, I think it was 7 years ago, the last time I was hospitalized. It's been a while.
Yeah, and that's intensive outpatient.
Intensive outpatient, correct.
Yeah.
And then we did some artwork, and people were creating some brilliant, beautiful artwork. I mean, it's probably better than the artwork in the art galleries. I'm like, how do people get that creative? I've never seen anything like it before. People were drawing they were coming up with some of the most genius creative artwork I've seen my entire life. And these are all people that are just suffering from mental illness. They're not Da Vinci, they're not Vincent van Gogh. They're just people that just suffer from depression, schizophrenia, bipolar, and coming up with this beautiful artwork. I'm like, where does it come from? It's like, how did you do that? It's like the most creative pieces that I can't comprehend. And I one thing that helps me is expressing myself through music, production, making beats. And I'll get into some of the ways that I make beats here in a little while, but my host perspective is when people listen to my music, they're like, how did you do that? It's like the same way that they came up with that art is the same way that I create music.
Right.
I don't think it comes from mental illness. I think that it just comes from a natural ability to make music. But it's almost like they recognize the talent and the creativity and that intuitive creativity and the ability to create art out of something from old records and chop them and flip them and do different things to them. But it comes from the ability to use my intuition and to use my conscious mind. And when it comes through meditation, it gives me insight and ideas. It's like divine. That's the way to do it as.
Now, we talked about kind of how you navigate, pursuing a career in the music industry while having, schizophrenia, staying sober is one of them, staying to yourself. Now, how have you navigated your relationship while also pursuing a career in the music industry?
But that question is kind of interesting because I've been in a relationship the past 5 years. So I've been with my partner for over 6 years. Wait, I've been living with her for 5 years, been with her 6 years.
Okay.
So I haven't been hospitalized in over 9 years.
Ooh,
And
congrats.
music keeps me busy. It
Yeah.
really keeps me busy. And it's been good to have somebody who's supportive of me with mental health and with my ability to make music. She's supportive of that as well. She'll let me know, hey, change this or do this or do this, try this when it comes to music. It's like she likes certain sounds. She says, maybe you should try this, maybe you should try this, maybe you should try this. And
So
it,
she
and it
helps
works.
you in your creative process.
And she'll go back and lay on the couch, take a nap, and just listen. And sometimes she says, okay, I like this, but try this, and that helps out. Another thing that helps out is being. She asked me if I'm okay. Is like, or turn that down. I think that's too loud, or I think that's too soft. Add this, add that. When she comes to my show, she tells me, "Oh, you did dope. You did an excellent job. That was fresh." Or if some other artists performing, it's like maybe you should talk to them. What she does is whenever we had conversations about music, she says talk to your leaders, and the leaders might be I guess I can mention names on this one. Leaders might be a DiBiase or a Cryptic One or somebody like that who's actually out there in the music industry, who has a ton of connections and who's making money in the music industry. She might say, talk to one of them, talk to your leaders, ask them questions, keep up with them, those type of things. And like it's almost like I go in there and I say, this is the way I make beats. I'll take about 6 or 7 records, buy about 6 or 7 records, chop 3 of them, like an experimental, a jazz, and a soul. Go in there and create a raw, distinct sound by chopping multiple records at once. And as Count Basie said, I make music every weekend. It's a chore, a fact of life. It is something that helps me out with my therapy, as far as going through my symptoms and going through my madness. It's one of the things that can assist me. And having somebody who's supportive of me, like my girlfriend, she's very trustworthy. She assists me in a lot of stuff, and it works hand in hand. I think all three work hand in hand: mental health, relationships, and music. And somebody who understands you, who connects to you, that really helps.
Yeah, and I've dated artists in the past who were not so like because I'm in the industry too. I kind of know a thing or two about stuff, and I've been musical forever. I sang Mozart's Requiem and Carnegie, so I know basic music theory. I'm a nerd. I'm a nerd in music, and I do a lot of studying on marketing and just different things. So, it's hard for me to have somebody that I care about and not, tell them what I think in a nice way. And most of the time they just don't want to hear it. So
Right.
it's like, that's kind of like a red flag on our relationship, really, because if they don't trust me enough to like let me into that part of them, then it just causes a whole lot of problems. So it sounds like, your girlfriend is really involved and you allow her to be involved in that creative process. You trust her, and well, you trust that she has good intentions, that she's not just judging you. You know what I mean? Because I think that's a lot of artists are pretty sensitive when it comes to their art. So, either they don't believe you when you're saying that you're good, they're good, because they have that insecurity, or if you're like, well, hey, you could have done this bit better and it would have been so much, it would have been dope or something. You know what I mean? Like just constructive criticism. Like they don't want to hear that stuff. So it's good to hear how you've been able to make this dynamic work and be so involved with each other,
Yeah, and I feel what you're saying as far as like if you're giving constructive criticism and you're negative and saying, oh, you know, if you say, I'll give a scenario. Say that you're dating somebody and you're making music and they go, oh, your music's terrible, your music sucks. I
Well, I
don't know.
wouldn't date them if they had
Yeah,
terrible music in the first place. That's kind of like a prerequisite. Like you have to be good at what you're doing. Like if you tell me you're a rapper and you suck, like that's it, we're done. You know what I mean?
right.
So it wouldn't be like, hey, that's terrible. It's like, hey, maybe you should do this. Or I can't give it like a specific example. Well, there was this one time where I was there with him and he was like first. And I kind of made that comment because I was like, oh, you're first. You know what I mean? Like nobody likes going on first. Well, that
Right.
struck a chord with him and it just made his whole set. And the whole set, he was just anxious and pacing and like, I was just like, I felt it for him, like loosen up. But anyway, so I wasn't, I guess he ended up telling me that it was, I made him feel that way. And that's why he had a horrible show. But it's like, I was there to be supportive. Like I didn't mean to fuck it up for him. But anyway.
One of the things that I think about is whenever you go on stage and people are like, you know, he's good, he's talented, but he could work on this or he could work on
Right.
that.
There's always room for improvement. You know what I mean? Like, especially when it comes to performing on stage. You could do some things different. You could, go out to the crowd more. And I have a background in giving criticism to, rappers through the different events that I have, Master of the Mic, for example, and just trying to get people to level up. So anyway, it's hard for me not to say something. If I see something that you could fix that would make it just that much more dope, like what kind of person would I be to like keep that to myself? You know what I mean?
Right, you got to speak up because if you get on stage and you're doing a terrible job and somebody screams, hey, lower your pitch some, think out. It's like, and they do it and then and everybody's like, oh shit, that was dope. It's like, or, use your spirit more, those type of things, those type of artistic things that people do. It's almost like, once you do that and they hear you and they try it, it's like, or even in the studio, it's like, I want you to use more cadence. I want you to use your vocal more.
Yeah.
I want you to come from the soul. I want you to think that, think with your solar plexus. It's like when they do those things and it works for them, they improve as artists and it sticks with them. And another thing is, whenever I see artists and they're struggling, producers or rappers or singers, whenever you call, it's kind of like whenever you see I guess I'm thinking about the Twisted record, Adrenaline Rush.
Mm-hmm.
It's like whenever you tell them to calm down, take your time, be easy. There's a skit on there. I can't remember the name of the song. But whenever you tell them something about how to create the right way or create the way that you intuitively are thinking of them, that helps the artists out and that helps them realize their hidden potential.
Right. Yeah, I don't date artists anymore.
Why not?
It's never ended well. It's just a conflict of interest. It ends up just being because I do have connections and stuff like that. So then it turns into me doing favors for them for pretty much free just because I like them or we're dating or some stuff. Mm-hmm. And it has potential for me to feel used. So yeah, luckily the person that I'm with right now enjoys music and is all about music, like loves it just as much as I do, but he's not, he doesn't perform. So, and it works out. Now, okay, so I guess that's it. I asked you how you navigate relationships and good mental health while pursuing your career in the music industry. I think those are like really important questions because I feel like relationships and your mental health can like make or break your career. If you're partying and hitting the drugs and not taking care of yourself, it'll run you ragged. You could have other issues. as far as not being able to perform well. Like, I don't know if you've ever gone to a concert where like the group was like so drunk they weren't even making sense on stage. Like, that shit's
I have
embarrassing.
I had
Um,
like that once. I got to share this with you. It was just the law. I was actually in Dallas. It was just the law Jedi mind tricks. This is what happened. I was like, I think I was like 18 or 19 at the time. I got to the venue and Just the Law was there. He was so drunk. He was just walking around the venue screaming. Oh, and nobody was at the show. There was only about 10 people there. And he was so drunk. He got on stage. He was ready to get on stage. By this time, I left. I say he's not gonna have a good show. I just left. And when I got home, I was actually doing a show a week later in Plano, and I think it was non-Pacific of Never Dug Disco. He told me Just a Lot got so drunk he couldn't rap on beat. He got up there, spit a acapella, said, "Let me spit this acapella." He said, and he turned the beat off and started to rap acapella. And he just fell flat on his butt
oh, how
in
funny.
the middle of the stage.
Yeah.
I was like, that is the saddest. That was the most pathetic thing. Well, it wasn't pathetic. It was just sad. It was almost like, you know, you get up there, you try to, you know, he's one part of Jedi mind tricks. He's one of the goats as far as being as far as a creator of style. He goes up there and he just can't do it.
Yeah, and most professionals, you know, I put on quite a few shows, and a lot of times they don't want that last spot because they do want to drink and like hang out with people, you know, or hang out with their fans. So we'll put them on in the middle. That way, you know, they're not worried about drinking too much before they perform. And then you have, you know, in my opinion, one of Eminem's records, you could tell that he was just really messed up on drugs. I think it wasn't Encore. It might have been Encore. Whatever the last one was before like Relapse, where he came out publicly and said that, you know, he had a drug problem. It was like, you know, his albums before that were so awesome, and then this one just wasn't, you know, and then it kind of made sense when you find out that, you know, he was going through some stuff. So yeah, I think taking good care of your mental health and then also relationships, because, you know, if you don't have a supportive partner or you don't have somebody that has your best interests in mind, you know, somebody that's enabling you to do bad things, you know, your partner can definitely make or break your career for sure. And it sounds like you have a really good partner, and, you know, you have a pretty good grasp on your mental health too. So congrats to you.
Thank you, Callie. I appreciate that.
So go ahead and plug anything that you have coming up. Do you have any albums? Are you performing? What's going on with you?
Let's see. There's a lot. I'm working on, well, let me start with this. The name is Drasmatic. I'm an underground producer from the state of Texas to the Bay Area, California. I perform in cities like Oakland, San Jose, Sacramento, Hayward, even San Francisco. I'm working with artists. I'll name a couple artists that I'm working with right now. Sun Solar Stokes, Amani Jade. I'm releasing a project with Sun Solar Stokes. There's an introduction that's going to be done by Micah 9.
Micah 9. That's the homie.
Yes. And working with Brycon as far as doing some solo stuff with Amani Jade. You can find me on Spotify, Drasmatic. The name is DRASMATIC. On social media, Drasmatic_1. Hopefully, Callie can post the Bandcamp link where you can purchase my music as all instrumental hip hop. And some dope beats, some dope vibes. Definitely some dope sounds. There's all styles of jazz, soul, funk. If anything, is very insightful, very creative, conscious thinking, very vibey, chill jazz vibes, lo-fi, boom bap. There's all styles of beats. So yeah, please, you know, go out and check it out. You'll enjoy it. It's definitely nice. Definitely nice. I do have a live show coming up. I hopefully it will be in about, I think with 924 Gilman, it's coming in about 2 to 3 months. Hopefully I can get on the stage with Sechi. I think it's Sechi actually.
Sechi. Yeah, you're right the first time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome. Do you know D. Labrie out there?
I've heard that name. I think I've heard. I have to check that out. I
Yeah,
heard that.
he's a homie. He grew up with the Hyro guys out in the Bay Area, so he was like their little brother. He's quite a character. He definitely does a lot of touring and stuff, and I've had him down here a couple of times. Yeah, we always run into each other around South by, but he's really cool. He's the homie, and then True Justice, DJ True
Oh
Justice.
yeah, definitely heard of True Justice. Yeah,
Uh-huh. He also works with the Hyro guys. And then I've actually had Casual out here before. That was a really good show. So, yeah.
I think I
Sure.
seen Hyro perform at least 6 or 7 times. I've been to Hyro Day 2 years in a row. Actually, he rapped in front of Pep Love when I was rapping. I didn't know I was producer at the time, really. Then I actually saw A Plus at Hayward's the Sax Record Shop a week prior to me performing there. So, I'm familiar with Hyro and
Yeah.
Tor and all of them.
You can't really not be in hip hop and not familiar with Hyro. I guess
Absolutely not.
maybe people who don't really understand the culture or are into hip hop as an art. They just like to listen to rap. Perhaps those guys, but it'd be like being in Texas and not knowing who Paul Wall or Lil Flip
Right.
is. Like Mike Jones. It's kind of like iconic for Texas rap. But and then we have a track that we're going to play when we take a break. It's called
I
Can't Win.
can't win for losing.
Okay, yeah, I can't win for losing. Okay, well, thank you so much, Drasmatic, and I'll definitely post your links on our Spotify pages, and then I'll tag you in the Facebook and the Instagram so everybody can find him and purchase his music off of Bandcamp. And so thank you so much for taking time to talk about stuff today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Miss Callie D. I really appreciate it.
And this is Callie D with a Smitten Kitten, and we have I Can't Win for Losing by Drasmatic coming up next.